Good morning and welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I'm Brian Emhauser and it is a Seahawks Saturday. That means, by the way, it's kind of a special day in Seattle sports. Not only do we get to watch the Mariners play in their playoff game tonight and the Seahawks and Mariners play tomorrow, but this morning we get to talk to Jeff Simmons. That always makes it a special Saturday. How are you doing on this Saturday, Jeff?
I'm a little under the weather today, but I might sound a little stuffed up or scratchy throat. You might hear me cough, but it's unfortunate. It's a beautiful day out. There's baseball on all day. I'm avoiding my wife's friends in the house right now for brunch. This was a saving grace for me right now. There's like 4 babies in my house, and so I'm in a much better mood all of a sudden.
Well, you could do us all in Seattle a big favor by just ending the Yankees season. I think everybody would be happy for the Yankees to finally just die in this series. But you guys don't have Bo Bichette. I saw he's left off the divisional series roster, so that's rough.
Yeah. There's a lot of injuries going on. Football, a lot of injuries going on. Baseball, they only have 3 starters on their playoff roster, so I'm very curious what their approach is for this series. No Bo is a big deal, though. He was their best hitter all year.
Well, good luck in that one, and maybe we'll have some fun with a Mariners Blue Jays championship series. That'd be pretty fun, but don't want to get ahead of ourselves. And speaking of injuries, Jeff, there are quite a few on both sides of this Tampa Bay Seattle matchup. So let's start there. You look at what the final injury report was for both teams yesterday, and a lot of names: Julian Love, Devin Witherspoon, Demarcus Lawerence, all not going to play in this one for the Seahawks. And also Josh Jones, but I think we kind of expected that. For the Bucs, cornerback Jamel Dean, cornerback Benjamin Morrison, cornerback / safety Christian Izien, all out, as well as running back Bucky Irving and Mike Evans. So a lot of names, man, a lot of pretty important names for both sides. Who do you think is more impacted by the guys that are out?
It's Tampa Bay. It's Tampa Bay for sure. They're missing, I don't know if you added them on their list there, but they're already missing their whole right side of their offensive line. And it's one of the best right sides of the offensive line of any team in the league. And the guys they have playing are pretty rough. I saw Steve Spagnuolo bashing on PFF grades, so I don't need to cite them. But their grades last week were pretty bad. And they're playing guys that just aren't even like fringe backups. They're pretty low. And then you take out probably the 2 best skill guys on the team, Mike Evans and Bucky, who's been so important to them. Their best pass rushing defensive tackle, 2 cornerbacks. It's a lot. Like San Francisco is one of the more injured teams in the league. Tampa Bay is 3-1, and this is pretty unprecedented how banged up they are by just week 5. Mm-hmm. And they didn't have Tristan Wirfs back until last week, and Chris Godwin back, who didn't look quite like himself. So, yeah, the Seattle thing's unfortunate, but I don't think you can really use that as an excuse when Tampa on the other side is really beaten up.
Yeah, well, I generally agree. I mean, Tampa Bay is missing 6, 7, 8 starters at this point, and then you've got, I think one of the things that probably escaped most folks, because who pays attention to the second or third string nickel corner for the Tampa Bay Bucs, but they had been playing Jacob Parrish at nickel. The rookie's been playing really well. And then the thought was that they might move him outside. Well, with Jamel Dean out and Benjamin Morrison out, but Christian Izien is their backup nickel. So they're actually down 2 corners. They're starting, a boundary corner and his backup. And now they're also down their backup nickel. So what they do with Jacob Parrish, I'm guessing they're going to move him outside, but they could also leave him inside and play another guy at one of these other spots. What they do with the nickel position, what they do with that corner position is going to be something to pay close attention to in this game. And I saw Bucs fans and analysts guessing. They're not sure what they're going to do either.
Yeah, like the whole Parrish situation is a big deal for them. Parrish has been, some people, one of the best defensive rookies outside of Abdul Carter so far. There's a lot of people saying that he's probably been the best defensive rookie in the whole league. And they do have a question now. Do you move him out of the position he's playing so well and put him outside where he's playing more base? Because Seattle doesn't. I heard Robert Mays say this, and you'd be surprised I am quoting Robert Mays, Brian, but I heard him say that Seattle's using 11 personnel at the lowest rate in the entire league.
Mm-hmm.
To keep that guy on the field, I imagine they're going to want him outside a lot of the game because Seattle doesn't go into nickel, and that's what's made the Kubiak offense so good. They're dictating heavy personnel, and then Seattle is struggling to run out of. I mean, Seattle's able to pass out of it, and so I imagine they're going to want Parrish on the field, especially with the other rookie Morrison, who's played well too. Down, I think they're going to mix and match him, kind of like how Seattle he's been using Witherspoon over the years, and I'm guessing that's the role he has tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned this earlier this week that I think if you're Tampa Bay, you feel like this is probably the best team to be having nickel corner problems against because, as you said, the Seahawks use 11 personnel where they have 3 receivers out there and force you to have a nickel corner on the field 32% of the time. So it's very, very low. And I mean, compared to last year, Jeff, the Seahawks had 11 personnel on the field over like 70% of the time. So it's a huge, huge change. And the Seahawks are going to probably attack the middle of the field quite a bit in this game because it's been a weakness for the Bucs with their linebackers. It's been a strength for the Seahawks. So all of that, I think, sets up pretty well for probably like the Cooper Kupps of the world. I think the AJ Barners and the Elijah Arroyos of the world. This should be a game that sets up well for them. And then I also just wonder if Torrey Horton is a guy that, with all the things the Bucs are trying to juggle, is he the guy that they just don't have the bandwidth to think about and maybe jumps up for a big game?
Yeah, he's got a really opportunity in this game, especially if they're moving guys out of position and they're pushed pretty hard. Jamel Dean's been a pure outside corner all year, and he made a big play in the Jets game last couple weeks ago. And I think another area Seattle can really take advantage of is the tight ends. One of the areas that Tampa is weak is linebackers and coverage. And that's one of the reasons they blitz so much. But Lavonte David is in the Bobby Wagner phase of his career, still a very good leader, still a very good player at tackling. But when you get him in space, he can be beat. And then they have another guy, Servokia Dennis. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Servassier.
Yeah, Servassier. Really cool name. But he's not a great coverage linebacker either. He's more of an attacker. And so with a Barner and Arroyo and the amount of 12 personnel Seattle can run, you combine that with Horton, there's a lot of matchup opportunities. And especially if you can get Ken Walker in space against some of those linebackers. I don't know if Lavonte David, who they had a lot of trouble with the running backs in the Jets game. They had a lot of trouble with some of the other games like that. And so I think there are some real matchups at the second level, and that's an area Darnold's really comfortable throwing to. And the Kubiak offense is built to attack that part of the field. So when you combine Horton and that matchup advantage, if Seattle can pass protect against those blitzes, there's real opportunities there.
So you flip to the Seahawks side, and somewhat ironically, or what's the word? Symmetrically, the Seahawks also have some shortages in their nickel package and in their secondary with Love and Witherspoon out. This isn't the first time that we've seen that. Actually went pretty well the last time, but this is a different offense they're going to be going against without those players. So this is going to mean most likely Darian Kendrick back at nickel. It's going to mean Job and Woolen are your outside corners. And what do you think the kind of side effects for this particular matchup against a team that is a heavy 11 personnel team? What do you think that's going to mean for this matchup?
Yeah, I think all the conversations about Rick Woolen kind of go off to the side now. I think he's going to be a really important part of this game. They're going to need him on the field a lot. I think you're going to have Job and Woolen outside, and then you're going to mix and match based on personnel groupings and based on matchups. You're going to see some Nicky Emmanwori in the big nickel, and you're going to see some Kendrick. And so you'd think on paper, Kendrick is probably they're more smaller, shiftier receivers. They got Chris Godwin, who looked a tad slow last week. Other receivers, Sterling Shepard is like not a shifty guy like Buka and Godwin could be, but he's a smaller, he's not a typical outside receiver. And so you think of Nick and what he can do. You figure him against like a Mike Evans would be a really interesting matchup, or a bigger guy, but maybe that advantage against some of those smaller receivers, I think you're going to see a lot of Emmanwori in the big nickel, and I think they had a lot of plans for him. I think this is a really, and Mike answered the question this week, that he can play against 11 personnel. And so I thought that was a giveaway. I think we'll see a lot of D'Anthony Bell at safety. And we'll see. The reason the Saints weren't able to take advantage of this when Witherspoon and Love were out last time was their O-line had like 3 backups, and they couldn't pass protect or even run a play without taking a penalty. Tampa has the same issue on the right side of their line. And so they have Wirfs back on the left side, Barton back at center. But if you can really pressure the right side of that line, I think it's going to be a thing where they might not be able to take advantage of that matchup again.
Yeah, I am really. This is going to be a game we learn, because I am not sure how Mike McDonald is going to deploy Nick Emmanwori. As you said, when I asked him about 11 personnel, he said yes. I've got some indications that like there's a whole aspect of Mike McDonald's defense that we haven't seen because Nick Emmanwori hasn't been available. It's not just a big nickel, little nickel thing. It is a Nick Emmanwori can do things that other people can't type of thing. And with him back on the field, I'm really curious. I'm very curious how he will be deployed, when he will be deployed, and when they go to Kendrick. And I think it'll be informative. I think that I'm not particularly, I mean, I obviously want to see him in Emmanwori play, but I'm not necessarily dreading Kendrick being on the field. He's been a playmaker. He's looked really good, especially in zone coverage. He's made some good reads. And I'll tell you this, Jeff, I'm the last man standing on Tariq Woolen Island. And by the way, talked to him yesterday, and he said he never changed his name. You can call him Tariq or Reek. He doesn't care, you know? So anyone who wants to call him Tariq is welcome to do so. But I was talking to him, and I just said, hey, are you partly looking forward to the fact that maybe with some of the challenges so far this year, people are going to test you more often and you might get a chance to make a play? And he's like, well, you know, you don't really want to be the guy that people feel like they're going to target, but yeah, you know, you look forward to the chance to make plays. And I just refuse to believe that this guy has completely forgot how to play a ball in the air. Like, I just don't think it's the case. Yes, I think he's got a little bit of a mental block right now, but one good way to get over a mental block is to have a lot of opportunities to make a play. And maybe this is the week, because a lot of people don't realize this, but Baker Mayfield has thrown the most turnover-worthy passes in the NFL, 9 through 4 games. So more than 2 a game. So I think there's a chance that this could be a game that someone, and hopefully it is Woolen, makes a play.
Yeah, look, I compared Baker to Brett Favre the other day, and I think hearing that stat is very telling of how Brett Favre used to play. He was a gunslinger. He had a lot of penchant for interceptions, drove Mike Holmgren crazy, but he made some unbelievable plays with his legs. He had unbelievable moxie. I see a lot of similarities there. And the thing about Baker is he's going to throw the ball at you. He's going to take chances. That touchdown at Buka barely gets through 2 guys last week that could easily be picked off, and it's a whole different conversation. And he makes the 80-yard touchdown, and everyone's like, oh my God. But that dude takes some chances. So I don't think he's going to hold back from throwing at Woolen. I don't think he's going to hold back from really throwing at anyone. I think that's what makes Baker who he is. And he's just got that kind of aggression that he's going to just keep throwing and throwing and throwing. And that leads to a lot of turnovers, sort of like how Favre used to play. And so, yeah, Woolen for anyone just needs some positive momentum. A big pick would be massive for him. I feel like there's just a lot of conversations about him. And now there's people are coming up with these theories about why people are turning on him. It's getting a little crazy. I can understand why people are upset with him. But I'm hoping he plays great. And I think this is a game where the corner's going to throw at you. He's going to be on a good receiver a lot of the game, and they target their receivers very heavy. They're not a tight end driven team. They don't throw to Rachaad White very often, space relative to Bucky. They're really reliant on those 3 receivers. So if there's a game where Woolen can kind of change the momentum of his season, get a big interception, I think this is absolutely a game.
Yeah, I think another key figure in this is going to be Ty Okada, who filled in for Julian Love against the Saints. I thought played a pretty good game in that one, but if I'm the Bucs, he's the guy I'm targeting. He's the guy, knowing where Baker likes to put the ball, how he likes to challenge downfield. I think they're going to try to pick on Ty Okada, which gives him a chance to make some plays as well. But of all the guys that we're talking about, he's the one I have a little bit of question of whether he can hold up against a top-tier quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the only game we've seen him really start and play sufficient minutes was Spencer Rattler getting no pass protection, and the whole game was just a disaster for them. And then when we saw the 49ers couple snaps against him, they were just abusing him. So if he's starting a lot, I don't know if it's going to be him or Bell. Yeah, I would not be surprised if they kind of designate him as their mark and really try to target him and get the receivers of that part of the field. And I don't know if Seattle double teams a lot of guys, and they can really try to attack those safeties. But yeah, that's kind of where Buka likes to win in that point of the field. It's not a lot of short stuff. It's kind of how JSN's winning this year, same kind of parts of the field. If it's Okada over Bell, he's going to have a really good game.
Last kind of thing on injuries, and at least that I can think of, and then we'll come back to it. But with Bucky Irving out, Bucky Irving's really good. This Bucs offense, running offense, has not been doing that well. Rachaad White's actually had slightly stronger statistical year than Irving so far. He has a higher success rate. He has their only rushing touchdown, so he'll get most of the carries. Sean Tucker's a guy that I hadn't really heard of, to be honest. I started digging in a little bit more. There's a pretty strong Sean Tucker contingent out there inside and outside of Tampa Bay. That this guy, he had as many 30-yard runs last year, I think, as Rachaad White, and like half the carries or a third of the carries or whatever it was, far fewer carries. And so I don't know that, there's really, when you get in the NFL, there's not going to be a break against a running back. You're going to find somebody that's pretty good. But it feels like a big deal that Bucky Irving's out of this game.
He is. Bucky Irving said, like Nathan always talks about, like, drop any running back in there, they'll be fine. But Bucky's one of the few, I think, difference-making running backs. You saw it right when he started to get sufficient playing time last year. He's just a difference maker. He's a special player in space. He's a lot harder. He's very hard to tackle because he's a little guy, but he's shifty and he's tough. And like that was a huge home run pick for them last year. I think it was in the 4th round. And so, yeah, you can put replacement level backs in there. And if you watch the end of like the Houston game they had earlier in the year where they had no business winning the game and both their tackles were out and the only thing they could do was run the ball up the middle with Rachaad White, and they scored the game-winning drive, essentially just moving that way up the field. And they were able to move the ball against one of the best defensives in the league, just purely running that power. And Rachaad White is more powerful. He's not shifty. And yeah, if you want some like Pete Carroll PTSD things, like how many times did it feel like these no-name running backs would come in against Seattle when they were injured, and all of a sudden they look incredible, and we're like, who is this guy? And then we find out they're pretty good later. Like that feels like that's happened so many times. And Sean Tucker has a lot of fans in the league. I don't know too many of them outside of Tampa, but Bucs fans are excited to see that guy play. He's had some big carries over the years, and he's not a bad back. He's not like putting in, I think like other teams would look at, like if George Halani had a couple good games, everyone would be like, who is George Halani? I think it's in a very similar respect as that.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good call out. And I lied. There was another injury thing I wanted to raise, which is the Demarcus Lawerence being out, because it fits with the Bucky Irving conversation. Demarcus Lawerence has been a huge part of the effectiveness in the run game. And
yeah,
he missed most of the game last week, and they did okay. In that game, I think Mike Morris picked up some of those edge reps for Demarcus Lawerence. I asked Mike McDonald yesterday about Jared Ivey and Mike Morris, and I think that the sign I got from that response from him is that Jared Ivey, I think will be active for this game. And when I was watching training camp, Jared Ivey was taking a lot of the kind of big end reps, like in the second group after Demarcus Lawerence. So I think Jared Ivey, there's a chance that he will get his most meaningful, might be 10 snaps, but I think he might get his most meaningful opportunity in this game as a rookie. I'm curious. I think he is well suited for that role. And Mike Morris has also quietly had a pretty strong season.
Yeah, when you're building a roster, you always kind of want to try to mirror other players on the roster with the bottom end. So if one guy comes out, you can kind of just plop him in. And obviously, Demarcus Lawrence's experience, his savvy, you can't replace that. He's been one of the best run defenders for several years, and he's so smart. And when you hear him talk, but Ivy, like stylistically, he's not like the explosive pass rusher. That's kind of who he is. He's supposed to be like the big end run stuffing. So I do think this is a game where he kind of fits. I think Mafe ended up moving a lot more to that side of the field when he came out and they were using him there more, especially to attack this right side of the Bucs line that's pretty weak. But if they're having trouble stopping the run, or if they need to get the base downs in good shape, Ivy makes a lot of sense to kind of get his most snaps in this game. Morris has played better this year. He was a big liability last year, and you did a really good show. Even that one game, he had like 6 snaps, and 4 of them like led to huge runs. So it's been nice to see him improve. He's definitely looked better on base defense against the run. But yeah, you definitely noticed once Demarcus Lawerence came out how stout they've been, and that was a guy me and you were really excited about all summer. I thought that would be a big impact that no one would talk about. It's a bummer he's not playing anymore.
It is. I'm glad. We've asked a couple of times if IR is a possibility, and Mike McDonald said no. So that's good news. I was a little worried that this was going to be an extended absence. The way he pulled up after pursuing Kyler Murray, kind of a no contact injury, it felt like a pull, which, a quad pull, those can take a little while. So, Mike McDonald said he expects that he'll probably try to get back next week. I'm guessing it's going to be after that, because I think they have the bye after next week. Is that right?
I think they play Houston, which is
they play Houston and then they have a bye. Yes, but Houston will be a Monday night game, so they'll have an extra. I'm guessing Houston is the time that I would start thinking he could be back. The Cat's in the Hat with a super chat says, Mike McDonald always seems bewildered when you throw stats at him. Great work, by the way. Do you think he actually hasn't seen them? Does it surprise you if so? He doesn't always seem confused, I would say. There's some that do kind of get him, and I think he does play coy on some of those things. I think for most coaches, they're focused on the film and what the implications are there. And the stats are kind of just to verify, or the stats bring up a question and the film verifies. I've talked to Coach McDonald and other coaches about that. So I don't expect him to be like holding all the stats in their head. I don't think that's how coaches coach. And no, it doesn't surprise me. I don't think there's many coaches that are kind of stats or analytics first. I think that the fact that Mike McDonald is stats and analytics fluent is what matters. And the fact that, like, even yesterday we were talking about their fourth down models and their kicking models and all this kind of stuff. And he's talking about, we changed the inputs. It's a dynamic model. Like, he understands how it works. This guy's a finance major. He knows numbers. But no, I don't expect him to know all those things. Jeff, I got to switch gears here. And have you been listening to what people have been saying about the Seahawks nationally now?
It's been popping up on my YouTube channel a lot more.
Yeah. Tell folks what you've been hearing around the league about the Seahawks and how the tone seems to have changed.
It's almost like the preseason never happened at this point. It's almost like the whole summer never happened, because basically every show I talk on has the same talking point about how good Sam Darnold is and how good the defense is. And now we're starting to see some other stuff. Nate Tice ranked all the rookies in the league yesterday. Nate Tice had Gray Zabel as this number 1 ranked rookie in the whole league. And so that was pretty crazy. But I couldn't help notice a segment on ESPN, and Dan Orlovsky was talking about Sam Darnold, and he was just like, me and Mina are on the Sam Darnold fan club. And I'm like, how do I remember it? But Darnold is just, they were showing the segment of all the stuff he's doing with his feet and with his throwing motion. And it's like, you can't now watch any national show and hear them just talk about Darnold. Colin Coward hammering Minnesota for letting him go. That's been a talking point. Daniel Jeremiah had a really interesting thing saying that Caleb Williams needs to be studying his lower half in terms of how calm his body is, how good his footwork is. And the thing on Darnold, that one of the knocks on him is historically he's been pretty jumpy. And they were saying one of the things that Kubiak's really done a good job of is really controlling. Imagine hearing a year ago that the number 1 pick, Caleb Williams, needs to study Sam Darnold, who's been a career backup at that point and a failed first-round pick. It just feels like there's so much, I don't know if it's groupthink or just people are reacting to the evidence they've seen, but it just feels like we're hearing the same message over and over. And then I see one of the national guys you sent me, for Greg Allman, who used to cover the Bucs, had McDonald as the coach of the year in the first quarter of the season. Mm-hmm. So whether it's the Athletic Football Show, whether it's the Ringer, the whole vibe of how this team has been talked about from what the hell are they doing on offense too? Oh, this offense is pretty good, and we really like Clint Kubiak. It's just dramatically shifted.
All right, Jeff, I'm going to welcome you into the Hawk Blogger therapy office. I want you to lie on the couch. I want you to tell me, how does that make you feel?
A little irritated. I'm a little irritated. I should be happy about it. But I'm a little irritated that no one seems to remember how they were talking a month ago. And again, me and you gave the Athletic guys a lot of credit because they owned it. They took the L. They said we were wrong. And when they did their preview this week that I know Josh sent around, that's where I was listening to Robert, they were really good about explaining how good the designs have been, what they've seen from Kubiak. But all these people like who are now like riding the bandwagon of Sam Darnold after just slagging them all offseason. And the part I've been annoyed by, and I hope this doesn't blow up in my face, is just this was the kind of like obviously Darnold's playing way better. But when all those power rankings came out and like Seattle was 20 and 21, and I'm like, I don't get it. This team looks pretty good to me on paper. If the offensive line isn't a disaster, I think there's a lot here. And it's like that, it's almost like that missed everyone. It missed every mark. Everyone focused on the DK thing. Like Mina Kimes did this podcast. I really like the format where in the preseason she would hand the guests two teams and she would let them rank them, and it kind of created their own power rankings. And the last one she did, she had like the Raiders, the Bears. There were some other ones, the Cardinals. There's one really egregious with Cowboys. Like she had, and I'm sitting there like, I know you're a Seahawks fan. I know you're trying to like not be homery, but like we did the rankings. We had them in like the top 12-ish. And I'm like, this team might be pretty good. And now all of a sudden everyone's like, oh yeah, they're good. I shouldn't be irritated by it. I should be happy. But the spiteful side of me is coming out, man.
I'm glad you were able to get in touch with your feelings there, Jeff. I feel a little differently. So
okay, that's good.
I feel a little bit. I definitely went through the irritation phase, but now I'm in the uncomfortable phase.
Where you think
I'm like, oh man, all eyes are on the Seahawks this week. They're going against Tampa Bay, and I honestly, the thing I will say I appreciate is all the folks I think have it right. They're saying, hey, this is a big game. It's the game of the week. Athletic Football Show went deep on this game this week, and it is a let's see how the Seahawks do against this team kind of week. Been here before, buddy. We've been here before, and it hasn't gone the Seahawks' way a lot of times. And this is a golden opportunity to not only really validate some of that optimism that's building, but open the door for what could be a really fun, special season. And I'm not convinced. I don't go into this game feeling like the Seahawks are 100% going to win it. If I was to remove all superstition and all vibes, and I was just to talk about this game and look at it objectively, I'd be like, whoa, Seahawks defense is significantly better than the Bucs offense. And it's got, even with the injuries, there's advantages all over the place, especially the offensive line and how the Seahawks defensive line should be able to pressure. The Seahawks linebackers are in good shape. The Seahawks secondary has been good. They've been playmaking. They got 7 interceptions. Baker Mayfield's going to regress to having some of the turnover-worthy plays picked off. Offensively, I'd say the Bucs are weak where the Seahawks are strong, and they should be able to move the ball. And the special teams is the broadest possible disparity you could have. The number 1 ranked special teams against the number 32 ranked special teams. Seahawks should win this game. But the fan in me is like, oh boy. Oh boy, man. I need to see this team actually come through in that moment in a way that they really haven't, at least at home, over the last season or so.
Yeah, we talked about it all of our Real Hawk Talk show on Wednesday. Like, they need to do this. They haven't had a lot of moments like this other than beating Arizona, where they've been the big test and they've passed. The Green Bay game, I imagine, sticks pretty fresh. And there was a game even with Tampa when Gino was coming up that year and they were in Germany and they just fell on their face. And that really hurt you. I remember that year. Mm-hmm. And so I get the reaction. There's definitely a part of me. I think I wrote you the other day. I hope they're not buying their own hype too much. So those thoughts have definitely crossed my mind. I think it's based on how we're both raised. I think it's both on kind of setting expectations. But yeah, I think the one biggest question about McDonald last year was when they played the big time teams, they not only lost, they look unprepared. And so the San Francisco game this year wasn't the best impression of how they're going to play, especially offensively. But until we see it, it's very normal for fear and doubt to creep in, especially where everything's just been going so well the last couple of weeks. And things have just been, they almost blew the game, I guess, on the other day. But 90% of that game, the Saints game, the second half of that Steelers game, just feels like we've been on this like fun joyride. And it's like at some point, reality usually slaps you or you get humbled. And is this the week? It's not ideal. I think all Seahawks fans are kind of going through that at some point until you see them do it.
Well, it's like you knock on the door for the Contender Club room, and you jiggle the handle and it's been locked time and time again. And you hope that eventually it opens and you get to spend some time luxuriating in that room. My question for you, Jeff, is does winning this week open that door? Does losing this week and beating the Jaguars next week open that door? Do you have to have both of those games? A lot of people are like, the Jaguars, that's not a big game. I think that is as hard or more difficult than this matchup. We'll get into that obviously next week, but that Jaguars defense is one of the best in the NFL on the road, 10 a.m., cross country. It's just not an easy game. So what has to happen over these next two games for you to feel like the Seahawks have stamped their entry into the Contender Club?
I think the defense has to look really good against a quality opponent. And I think the defense is the core of this team. I think obviously Darnold has to maintain his play, but I don't think it's just one game. And considering how injured Tampa is, I think it's this 2-game sample. You're going to learn a lot. And you're right. I think to the average fan, you ask them about the Jags, they'd be like, yeah, they're in a crappy division. Trevor Lawrence sucks. Brian Thomas having a horrible year. All true. But the thing that's impressed me is not just the defense. Their line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball have dramatically. They had one of the worst offensive line. And on paper, everyone thought they'd have a horrible offensive line. And I think they're playing really, really well up front. They're running the football really, really efficiently. And Travis Etienne's had a pretty good year. And they've been and then their defense, which you didn't think from a Liam Cohen team, has been really hard hitting and really physical. And you saw them kind of the way they physically played with San Francisco. That was really impressive. And so I think both these games, you have to see this 2-game sample. Houston is really after one side of the ball team. They're really weak offensively. So I think these two teams where they're pretty good on both sides of the ball, they're kind of in a similar tier as maybe where Seattle is. I think Seattle's a little better than Jacksonville, but I think for them to jump up to the next tier, you're going to need to see them level up and beat teams that are better than Arizona.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm lowering the bar, I'd say you win one out of these next two games and at least entry into that Contender Club is on the table, right? If you lose both of these games, then I mean, you'd have to just
look like frauds.
You're pretty fraudulent. I'll say this though. The reality is, Jeff, the Seahawks are better than the Bucs, this version of the Bucs, and they're better than the Jags. And the only reason we wouldn't come into these saying, hey, they should win those games is because of history. But as far as this, and what?
Go ahead. I was going to say we're both a bit neurotic, but
yeah. But I just feel that if you were just to take some of the emotion out of it, Seahawks should win those games. And I really would like to see them play like the team they have shown themselves to be so far this year. The only game where they were not themselves and didn't even look like themselves was the first game. And it increasingly looking like a big outlier. So I'd love to see their brand of football, their identity that has been really established, show up again and again and prove to them and to us that they deserve to be considered. And look, Jeff, you watch as much football as anybody. Do you look around the NFC and see a team where you're like, man, there's just no way the Seahawks could compete with them? They're just out of their league.
No way. in the last couple of years when I watched San Francisco, I would say that.
Mm-hmm.
And the Eagles are 4-0, but they're as limited and as not fraudulent. I don't think fraudulent's the right word, but they're as vulnerable as they've been in a while. The Rams were the team that were really, I was wondering how they were going to hold, and they had one of the worst losses of the year, and really they should be 2-3 right now, if not for Adonai Mitchell. And they had their kind of luck reversed this week. Some people were talking San Francisco as a contender. I don't see that at all. And then you look, Tampa, when they're healthy, maybe, but I don't know how healthy they're going to be all year. They might be banged up a lot of the year. It seems as wide open. Green Bay was the team early in the year where they're like, whoa, those guys are like a tier. They put Parsons on a good team. They lose to Cleveland and they tie Dallas where they give up 40 points to the Cowboys, and the defense is supposed to be their whole thing. So from like DVOA standpoint, from a complete roster standpoint, Seattle looks as competitive as anyone, but we just have to see them do it.
I almost would say, based on what I've seen so far, Tampa Bay is the team that has maybe the highest ceiling of some of the teams that I've been watching, because they'll get back Mike Evans, they'll get back Gedeke, they'll get back Chris Godwin will get healthier, they'll get back Jalen McMillan. They'll have probably the best receiving core 1 through 4 in the NFL, and they will probably deploy 3 receivers and 4 receivers more than most. Bucky Irving will come back. They'll get back their corners, and their corners have looked really good. That was a weakness for them last year. If I'm Tampa Bay, I'm probably trying to figure out how to get another linebacker, because I think their linebackers are questionable. But I think the way Baker Mayfield's been playing with all of that weaponry, I would take that team over the Eagles. Like they should have beat like the Eagles, or potentially could have beaten the Eagles last week, even with the blocked punt and all the other mistakes that went on. So, yeah, I think it's a really interesting NFC, and obviously Eagles are undefeated. Have only lost 1 game in their last like 24 or whatever it is. I totally get it. There are also rumors that both receivers are unhappy and maybe wanting out. So
it's weird.
It's a weird group. We've seen what post Super Bowl hangovers can do.
The team we didn't really mention is the Lions, who kind of have been like Seattle, where week 1 looked like an outlier. And I put out a bunch of stats before week 1. I think it was mostly to just set myself up for failure. But if you looked at last year and even historically, week 1 tends to be a liar, and weird stuff happens in week 1 that you can always look back and be like, this made no sense. Like last year, Jaden Daniels looked awful in week 1, had one of the best rookie quarterbacks. We saw in Seattle what Bo Nix looked like. San Francisco like pumped the Jets in week 1 last year and won 6 games. Week 1 tends to lie, and the Detroit and Seattle since week 1 have probably been the 2 best teams in the NFC.
So we've got some more super chats, and this one comes from Brent Yoendo. Heard you, Brian, in the latest version of The Sound, the Seahawks little show that they put together. Seahawks org is definitely tuning in. P.S. I want your hoodie. This is a pretty awesome hoodie, I will say. And the best way for you to get this hoodie is to go to simplyseattle.com. Use code HawkBlogger15. You can get the hoodie I'm wearing. You can get unreal Seahawks throwback stuff. You can get awesome Mariner stuff, Husky stuff, whatever Seattle sports gear you want. Code HawkBlogger15, and now they've opened it up so you can use it multiple times. It was a good enough deal that initially they only wanted to let you use it once per person. Now they're letting you use it multiple times. Use code HawkBlogger15, get 15% off. It is a screaming deal. Some other super chats we've got here, Jeff. Hawk Scoots, who's been a member for a year. That's awesome. Says the national media has been rough on Bradford, though. I don't think it's just national media. I think everybody's been rough on Bradford. And I mean, I put out a video on this guy, Jeff. We've talked about this a bunch. We don't have to go deep on it. I will continue to say what I've said. I don't think Anthony Bradford's a Pro Bowl, guard. I don't think he's a rising star. I do think that people really forget what championship O-lines can look like. I think they forget what J.R. Sweezy was like at guard. I think they forget what James Carpenter was like at guard. Paul McQuiston, all the guys that the Seahawks had to run out at times. I think that generally Anthony Bradford has been about a league average guard. And you might say that's crazy. Look around the league. There are not many guards playing great football. And when I put out my video, like I didn't know what I was going to find when I looked at all the intermediate deep throws and 10 plus yard runs. I was like, okay, is he doing his job? Is he contributing to these? Is he a liability? Are they lucky to be getting these passes off? And by and large, Jeff, he was fine. Like he was fine. And I just feel like people are a little over their skis on how negative they are on him. But I'm not saying he's the next great guard.
Yeah, I think just human nature. Like I was explaining this to someone last night. I can't remember who I was talking to, but people were wondering like, why are Seahawks fans so hard on Woolen? And I was like, you really don't like, you can't put that together. Like I like Woolen, but like when you make like goofy looking mistakes in big moments, people are just going to have very strong opinions on you. And Gino, to an extent, people love Gino in like the deep analytics community, but he had goofy looking interceptions in big moments. And so I think that's one reason fans were Bradford videos come out, and the penalties have been way better this year, but he just has kind of, yeah. Like I think that would be, if he was getting the penalties, then for me, it would be like, okay, I can't handle this guy. He's been mostly okay. Like you have to look pretty deeply to see his mistakes, but he just makes goofy looking plays. And unfortunately, when that's caught on video, it's going to form perception, and perception is reality with fans. I don't think most fans are like expected to be super educated and studying analytics. And I think that's just nature of the business. And when people look kind of goofy, like Woolen, like Gino, like guys who fumble, like Walker sometimes when he starts splitting the field and going the other way, it's just going to generate these over-the-top reactions. And it's tough on him because, look, I don't think we have another option that's realistic that's going to really upgrade them. And they're not trading for a guard. Shane Lemieux is sitting on the street. I think you got to just live with it and hope he gets a little better as a run blocker and can hold up and pass pro a little bit.
So there's 64 starting guards in the NFL. 64, right? 2 on each team. You want to guess how many have a PFF grade over 70? 70 is an above average starter.
8?
It's a good guess. 10.
Wow.
So it's a really, really thin position. I would bet if I went to tackle instead of guard, I wouldn't be surprised if it's twice that. It is 17. So close to twice that. It's just not a strong position in the NFL. And if I went to there's actually 32 tackles that are 60 and above, which is at least league average. It's about half that for a guard. So I get it. People are going to be able to find at least one play and probably more on Anthony Bradford looking silly every week.
Yeah.
So if that's your agenda, you're going to have plenty of ammunition. But if you're trying to say, is the Seahawks offensive line cohesively, collectively playing winning football, if that's your evaluation, I think you come to a different conclusion. And that's kind of how I see it so far.
Yeah.
All right. A couple more super chats here. Levitate Music says, big test tomorrow. If we are who we think we are, then we should win. Also, we have to win next week for the tiebreaker's sake.
Oh, common opponents.
The Niners.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
Burn them last year.
Yeah, common opponents was one of the things that got them in the 5th tiebreaker, right?
Good call.
Yeah. Hadn't thought about that. Good one. Daniel Hultanius. Wow, I don't know exactly what that super chat equates to in US dollars, but thank you for the super chat. It says, can you explain to me why Rams are like the nation's fave before the season, and many experts deemed the Hawks like the 20th to 25th ranked team? Didn't they have the same record last season? It's mind-blowing to me. Yeah, what do you think there, Jeff?
You obviously read a lot of my tweets this offseason, because every power ranking show I saw would have the Rams somewhere between 4 and 8, and the Seahawks were usually somewhere between 17 and 24. And I said, look, I would bet on the Rams. They had way more continuity coming back over the Seahawks, but the gap between them made no sense to me. Seattle had a better point differential last year. Seattle really should have beat them in the one game. They gave them as much trouble as anyone. They had the same win total. And really all the Rams did was get worse at corner and switch out receivers. And I think just the reason the Rams are so I think Matt Stafford is like a media like favorite. I think when you watch him play and you really dive into like the throws he makes as cool of the throws as anyone. And he has not looked like the guy we saw last year, unfortunately. He's looked more like his peak. And then Sean McVay, I think, is just beloved by a lot of the media guys because of how well he's done in his tenure, how likable he's been for a lot of people. I think he's got a lot of relationships with media. But frankly, I didn't understand it either. I understood the Rams being ahead of them on lists, but the gap to me, it made no sense. And I tweeted that to a lot of people this summer. So I couldn't agree more. As of last week, I said the Rams looked like a slightly better version of the Seahawks. And they go out and just get burned by Mac Jones, and their pass rush is completely negated. And that game, they should have won the game still. Kyron Williams fumbles at the 1 yard line, but they don't, to me, look like the fourth best team in the league and 2 tiers above the Seahawks. They look like a good team, but they don't look like a great team so far.
Yeah, and I wouldn't underestimate the desire of media, especially, to have a great team in LA. You know, and it's almost like stop trying to make the Rams a thing, and that they're not. They're going to always try to make the Rams a thing, the same way the Cowboys are always going to be a thing. And I personally, I think the Rams have been one of the top 3 most impressive teams so far this year to me, even with all the things that are true. Like their wins have not been impressive. They blew an absolute game that they should have won against the 49ers. They made bad coaching decisions. Like there's a lot of things that haven't been good, but that team, you can see if things click together, their ceiling is really high.
Well, there's 2 areas. Yeah, there's 2 areas right now they're really struggling with. The cornerback play, which you allude to, I think, in the Eagles game. And before that, once their best corner went injured, a lot of their they've really struggled at corner. Like they had a lot of trouble. They couldn't cover Kendrick Bourne last week. A lot of people are just hammering them. The Rams should trade for a corner. And the weird part, the second one, is special teams blocking on kicks. A lot of people were blaming Josh Carty last week, but they let a bunch of Niners run free in both those blocks and the miss. And they lost the Eagles game because they blocked a field goal and they missed 2 field goals at the end of the game. That seems correctable. Like that seems very correct. Tampa's had a lot of issues on punts, but they gave away 4 points last week that would have won them the game just because they couldn't block. They lost the Eagles game. That was a 10-point swing. If they can tighten up those 2, I think they have more elements to their team in terms of how they can run the ball, throw the ball, rush the passer than anyone else. Their linebacker level, not great either. But those 2 limitations right now have hurt them, and they're almost 2-3 instead of 5-0 because of those really 2 limitations.
Yeah, I think when they're at their best, there's not a lot of teams that can slow down an offense with the way Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua are playing, and then the second and the tertiary and fourth options that they've got, whether it's Terrence Ferguson who will start to develop, whether it's Tutu Atwell, like they've got. I think Jordan Whittington is a real player. So I don't think there's a lot of secondaries that can stand up to that team. I do wonder about Rob Havenstein, who was out that game, had 2 surgeries on his shoulders, both shoulders this offseason, has not been playing as well anyway. I think the pass protection has not been as good. But in general, I do think that the Rams are a legit team. We have a couple more Super Chats. We're going to get to those in a second. Jeff, I have to tell you, I'm tempted to make the trip tonight to see the Mariners play at T-Mobile Park. Folks, tomorrow there's going to be obviously the Seahawks game, an epic day where you can go to a Seahawks game and then directly over to a Mariners playoff game across the street. We've got a deal for you to help make that possible. Take a listen. We're headed towards fall, so I'd love to find some indoor events to attend with my family, which is why I want to give the sponsor of today's video, SeatGeek, a huge shout out. With over 35 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app. There are more than 70,000 events listed on SeatGeek, including concerts, sports, festivals, and a bunch more. The NFL is officially back, MLB playoffs are around the corner, and the NBA not too far behind. SeatGeek has your back. Each ticket is rated on a scale from 1 to 10, so you know you're getting a good deal. Look for the green dots. Those are the best. Red, not quite as good. Plus, every ticket is backed by their buyer guarantee. And you know what? It doesn't really matter if you are a Dua Lipa fan or a Benson Boone guy, or who knows, maybe you're a Tate McRae person, but there are great concerts coming your way. Find them on SeatGeek. And I have a code for you guys. You can use code HawkBlogger10 for 10% off your next set of tickets at SeatGeek. That's 10% off any tickets with promo code HawkBlogger10. Make sure you click on the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account so you can use it later. Thanks, SeatGeek. Awesome deal. Click the link, get the deal. You're going to want to do it. And also, make sure you download the Sleeper app right now. I've actually got a special deal going on. So not only can you get a $100 match when you use code HAWKS on your first deposit, but you get a free $20. No deposits even required. Plus, first-time users will also receive a $100 deposit match up to $100. So really, really cool deal. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. All right, Jeff, let's get through these other super chats, and then we'll get you on your way. We've got Noah Berman, who's been a member for a year and a half, which is awesome. My favorite podcast each week. If we beat the Bucs and unlock the door to contending, is there a big cat type trade you'd like us to make? What position? Yeah, Jeff, we did starting to get the word that the Saints might be looking to sell. You look around the league, is there a trade you think the Seahawks should be making?
We talked about it last week. I still wonder about Trey Hendrickson, and we saw they couldn't close that game. And I think San Francisco is going to be searching for an edge rusher now that they keep winning. I think, especially if Demarcus Lawerence is banged up, I think one more really good pass rushing guy off the edge, I think that can really complete the defensive linebacker. I thought when you came up with that idea last week, I thought that was pretty brilliant. I had not considered that at all. That's a name to watch for sure. That team's going nowhere, and he's 36 years old. Ooh, that would be fun if you can cover up the middle of the field with those two guys.
Yeah, I like that one. I'm also interested in what's going to happen with Miami and whether or not there's any guys you can grab off that squad.
Yeah.
I'm hoping against realistic hope that maybe the Browns would be willing to trade one of their guards that are on the last year of their deal. I think if you get a Joel Bitonio or you get a Wyatt Teller, although I'm sure Uchenna wouldn't be thrilled with that, I think that could be an interesting ad. So we'll see. We will see. All right, a couple more here. Levitate Music is back. Says, did anybody see that clip of CJ Stroud getting sacked in like a 0.1 seconds? At least our O-line isn't that bad. Not anymore. Right? That's a good perspective.
That's what it used to look like.
It is. It is on the regular. Smokehawk, who's been a member for a year, says, how does the 49ers win affect the division? How do you see it affecting the division, Jeff?
Well, they're 3-0 in the division now. They've beaten all three of the Seahawks, Rams, and Cardinals. And one of the big tiebreakers is division record. And so head-to-head opponent, division record, they're looking really good if you end up in a tie with them. And they got the easiest schedule in the league. And so that's a big win for them. Getting that Rams win was as big of a win as you might see all year.
I think so. The easiest way to think about this is nobody in the division can win a head-to-head tiebreaker with the 49ers at this point. It's off the table.
Yeah.
The best you can do is tie, draw with them, which would move you to a second tiebreaker. I think that combined with their schedule makes the 49ers pretty clearly the division favorites. Like, I don't think they're the best team. I don't. And I'm not intimidated by the 49ers. I'm actually looking forward to the Seahawks getting a chance to play them again. But if you're just looking numerically at this, I think there's a pretty strong case to be made that they should be the favorites to win the division at this point. They came into the season as favorites, not by me or you, but by odds makers. And I think that the benefit of those 3 wins, I think, makes that a pretty highly probable outcome. The Seahawks could win a bunch of games and maybe get like just the win total on them, but 49ers have an easier schedule. They just do. The one bit of hope there, Jeff, the Browns, Giants, Bears matchups for the 49ers that I think people have thought is going to be simple. Wouldn't shock me if one of those teams, since the 49ers can't rush the passer, maybe one of those teams comes up and bites the 49ers, but we'll find out. All right. 2 more. Hers Booby, who's a member for 2 months, says there's this isn't a must win this week. I'm fine with a competitive loss. If we win 2 out of the next 3, we should be good heading into the bye. Do you agree with that, Jeff?
For the most part, yeah. Just the context of all of it matters a lot. Like, if they have a close game, then they look great against the next 2 weeks. I can live with that. But it's hard to just generically come up with an answer for me. I really do want to see them win this game. I think it's meaningful just in terms of their perception, in terms of what they haven't been able to do. And if we want to see them team go from good to great, I think this is a really important stretch for them.
All right, last thing. Greg Whitworth has gifted 20 Hawk Blogger memberships. Love this from you, Greg. Appreciate the generosity. Hopefully, if you want these, turn on gifting on your YouTube account. Google it to figure out how to do that. Like, subscribe, comment. All those things are how YouTube decides who gets these free memberships. Jeff, all right, last thought from you on this game. What's going to happen tomorrow?
I think it's going to be a closer game than people realize. I was hoping the injuries would just make it pretty comfortable, but I think the Seahawks are able to pull this out in the end. I think it's going to be like a 7 to 10 point win for the Seahawks, but I think it's going to be one of those games that you're never going to feel comfortable until the clock hits 0. And the way Todd Bowles can blitz, the way Baker Mayfield can score points, I don't feel great about this game, even with all their injuries going in. I think this is going to be one of those you're sweating out for 3 hours.
I agree. It's going to be, it wouldn't shock me if the Seahawks win going away, but it also wouldn't shock me if they lost. So, this is one of those types of games. All right, Jeff, amazing stuff as always. Make sure you follow Real Jeff Simmons online. I'll say this, folks. It is a super special time to be a Seattle sports fan. You've got a Huskies game today at noon. If you're a Cougs fan, I'm sure there's something to watch as well. Although I have to admit, I don't follow the Cougars as closely. You got the Mariners tonight in what is going to be an electric atmosphere down there at T-Mobile Park. You've got the Seahawks game tomorrow, which is going to be amazing, feeding right into a game 2 of Mariners playoffs. Man, it would be fun if we could just have a weekend of winning. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be amazing to wake up Monday morning with the Seahawks, stamping their ticket to being a relevant team, and the Mariners, beating Tarek Skubal and going up 2-0? Wouldn't that be awesome? Not saying it's going to happen, but man, it could be a really, really special time. And let's hope that the both boys in blue, do their jobs this week. Again, if you haven't already taken advantage, make sure you go over to simplyseattle.com. Get all your favorite gear. Hawk Blogger 15 gets you 15% off. It's a screaming deal and really some of the best gear out there. Love, love, love what they got. All right, everybody, that will do it for this Seahawks Saturday edition of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Emhauser. Take care.